Meeting to order. Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Here.
Trustee Dodge.
Here.
Trustee Calandrello.
Here.
Trustee Healy.
Here.
Trustee Katsinas.
Here.
Trustee Malani.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of February 17, 2020 Committee of the Whole minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton.
move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of February 17, 2020.
Second. Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge. Aye. Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. Actually, I'd like to revisit that vote. We do have to make an adjustment to that, the Committee of the Whole minutes. Trustee Malani, when we asked for a consensus on the cannabis ordinance, I believe in there it says that,
He voted no.
what's that?
Didn't he vote no?
Correct, but it says that everybody had a consensus, so they did not. So we need to adjust that. I believe it's on like about page 6. So if we can adjust that. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that change.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Review revised ethics policy and discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to recommend to the Village Board to pass an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 8 of the Orland Park Village Code, Ethical Standards of Conduct.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded. Before we move into discussion, I understand that there's a presentation to be made.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission.
Trustee Healy.
I'd like to introduce, it's my honor to introduce the members. We first have a member of the commission, is Carol Griffin-Ruzich, who's not here tonight. Carol was a lawyer in private practice and former Board of Trustee member. Anyone who has worked with Carol knows she brings an honest assessment of any issue she deals with. Next member is Kevin Scanlon. Kevin's here tonight. Retired after a distinguished career as an HR executive. Kevin brought a ton of real-world experience in dealing with ethical employment and governing issues. Next one is Ed Schussler. Everybody knows Ed, former mayor, board member. Ed's legal observations were extremely valuable in developing this proposed ordinance. The final member of it was Sean Compass. An IT professional, Sean is currently the chairman of the Technology Commission for the Village of Orland Park. All and IT skills, Sean assisted greatly in charting the course of this ordinance. Finally, we should mention Dennis Walsh's assistance and opinions were cogent. His years of practicing municipal law were invaluable in this ordinance. So we'll turn it to Sean for presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Healy, Mr. Chairman, trustees, and staff. Half a year ago, this board appointed a business IT consultant, me, to the Ethics Committee, and probably to the surprise of no one here, there's now a PowerPoint presentation. Big surprise, right? With all respect to the attorneys present in the room, I will concede that one thing worse than legalese is consultant ease. However, if you bear with me, I hope this deck will provide context and a high-level overview of the ethics standard of conduct recommendations for those that have not thoroughly read through it. So Trustee Healy stole some of my thunder. I'd like to start by acknowledging all those that contributed their time and thinking to this recommendation. Trustee Bill Healy chaired our committee in his years of experience as a public accountant. Carol Rusich could not join us today and I believe is enjoying 80-degree weather down south. Carol shared with us her experience as a trustee and as an attorney. Ed Schuster also shared his experience as a trustee, attorney, and is amazing at finding grammatical errors in a document. I should probably note that Ed did not review this presentation. Kevin Scanlon brought his years as a health care executive and human resources lead. He has a gift for relating an over-generic concept to a personal experience, which brought us additional clarity. I joined this committee with 20 years of technology consulting and as the current chairman of the Technology Commission. I would say that I contributed my experience in process design and testing. You may also note from the images here that my aversion to neckties is very real. I'd also like to thank Dennis Walsh, who gave us his legal advice and kindly translated our ideas into an ordinance you have before you. This was a weighty topic, and this was a great group of people to tackle it. I'm proud of the collaboration that went into this proposal. So just to refresh a bit on the history and purpose, we were formed last May and had our first session on May 22nd. Our purpose was, A, to review the village's existing ethics ordinance and determine what improvements could be made, and B, to make recommendations to the village board on updates to the ordinance. Today, we are beginning that final step. As I mentioned, this was a weighty topic, and I suspect that there may still be some discussion left. We referenced the following sources of input in our deliberations. We took into consideration the Illinois Attorney General Model Ethics Ordinance, the Illinois Governmental Ethics Act, 5 ILCS 420, the Illinois State Official and Employees Ethics Act, 5 ILCS 430, Representative Ethics Ordinance and acts from other municipalities, survey feedback from the village board, concerns raised by the commissioners on the repealed ethics ordinance, and we met 7 times over 8 months. One of the first considerations by the committee was whose conduct should be considered within the scope of the ordinance. The bulk of our recommended ordinance focuses on village officials defined as an elected or appointed official of the village board of trustees and the village clerk, and or members of village advisory panels, boards, committees, and commissions, and members of non-governing boards, committees, or commissions, regardless of whether the official is compensated for service in his or her official capacity. The village manager is a contracted employee who leads all village staff, is accountable to the mayor and board of trustees. Ethical complaints about village employees shall be managed by the village manager unless the village manager is named in the complaint, in which case the board of trustees will determine the discipline as they do currently. Ethical conduct of employees is defined under employment law, as well as the employee handbook written by staff leadership. Now, should this ordinance be approved as recommended, the village will be introducing 2 new roles into the system. Appointed by the mayor with advice and consent of the board, the ethics officer will be the first point of contact within the ethical complaint process. The ethics officer will acknowledge receipt of complaints, notify the subject of a complaint, conduct preliminary inquiries, and exercise discretion as to whether the complaint warrants further review by the Ethics Commission. The Ethics Commission, comprised of 3 members, shall manage and execute the process for determining the outcome of a complaint, including investigations, hearings, disciplinary actions, imposing fines, and or referring the complaints for criminal prosecution as necessary. They will also take the role served by the Ad Hoc Ethics Committee in recommending changes to the ethics ordinance from this point forward. The ethics advisor role is included in this presentation to underscore that this is the role that is currently being filled by the village attorney, not the ethics officer. The village attorney will continue to advise village officials on legal and ethical matters, but does not play a role in the process which determines the outcome of an ethical complaint. This slide did not lend itself well to visualization, so please bear with me as I go through it. Just to read it out loud. Whenever any village official has an ownership, employment, financial, family interest, or other interest in a proposed contract, business, or transaction with the village, which interest is allowed under this village code of ethics, such village official or employee shall file with the village clerk a written disclosure of interest statement. Such written disclosure of interest statement shall be filed with the village clerk not later than the call of order of the meeting at which action is contemplated, or where there is no such meeting, within 48 hours of the village official's learning of an interest allowed under the village code of ethics. The Disclosures from other village officials must be made to their respective chairman and other members of the body on the official record. The main distinction here is that such disclosures will be filed in written form before a decision or vote is cast. Regarding the submission of a complaint, the following are some key notes. As with most ordinances, the effective date begins once it has been voted into the village code. The ethics officer will only accept complaints that occurred after this date. Complaints must be written and signed and delivered to the ethics officer via the village clerk's office, either in person or through certified or registered mail. In the interest of due process protected by the Sixth Amendment, the subject of the complaint will be notified, and the ethics officer will give the subject a reasonable amount of time to respond to the complaint. Complaints must contain a statement of facts of which the complainant has direct knowledge, and the subject of the complaint has the right to know who has accused them. Complaints must be filed within 1 year of the alleged violation. This is to ensure that determinations are based on evidence that has not deteriorated with time. And to avoid abuse of this process prior to an election cycle, there are 2 periods of time considered. If a complaint is filed 46 to 90 days before the start of an election involving the subject of the complaint, the ethics officer and commission will expedite the process to the best of their ability to come to a resolution. If a complaint would be filed within 45 days of the start of an election, it will not be considered until after the election concludes. So just to recap on the new roles, the ethical complaint procedure is effectively a 2-stage process, with the ethics officer receiving all of the complaints and the ethics commission adjudicating complaints referred to them by the ethics officer. Should the initial investigation provide evidence that a criminal act has been committed, the facts will be referred to criminal prosecutors. The last slide covers points about the formal hearing conducted by the Ethics Commission. While procedures for the formal hearing are drafted, there are 3 key points that we wish to stress. The subject of the complaint has a right to be heard prior to any decision that is made that is adverse to the subject. The subject has a right to representation in any meetings and is responsible for any legal fees. The formal hearing shall be a presentation of facts, allowing both the complainant and the subject of the complaint the time to present their case and cross-examine witnesses. Thank you for your time in presenting this overview. While less exhaustive than reading the full ordinance, I hope it does set some context for thoughtful discussion.
And Trustee Healy, I know that you had a recommendation for the path forward.
Pardon me?
You had a recommendation that you sent to us on a path forward?
Right, I think George is going to take care of that.
Okay.
So, so as was mentioned in Trustee Healy's correspondence, so today is the presentation of the draft ordinance to solicit any type of feedback. Then tomorrow or soon thereafter, the draft ordinance will be forwarded to the volunteer advisory and commission members for any feedback that they may have. Probably a good idea to get their feedback as well. On or around the 17th of March, not the 17th of March, the ad hoc commission can regroup to incorporate those changes if they so choose, and then on the first meeting in April, the final ethics ordinance can be brought back before the Board of Trustees for final review.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I want to thank the Ad hoc Commission for their hard work on this ordinance. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank the board for supporting this commission in the goal to create an ethics ordinance that sets the standard for the state of Illinois. After reviewing this ordinance, I think we are very close to achieving this goal. I think your next steps make a lot of sense. Personally, I've reviewed the ordinance and have a few minor suggestions that I've already passed on to the Ad hoc Commission. I encourage the Board of Trustees to do the same. I also think it makes sense to pass this on to our volunteer commissioners to receive their suggestions as well if they have any. Your next steps that include the commission meeting one more time to compile these suggestions and then bring a final ordinance to the board for a discussion on the ordinance followed by a vote. This will bring your efforts to a conclusion and provide Orland Park with an ethics ordinance that the rest of the state can use as a model. I know that this has been a lot of hard work, and I appreciate it, as do all of the residents of Orland Park, and I'm sure the Board of Trustees. There is nothing more important than transparent, fair, and ethical government. Over the past several years, we have implemented live audio, live video, and committee of the whole to increase transparency. Now we will have an ethics ordinance that is fair and holds those involved in our government to the highest ethical standards, thanks to the hard work of all of you that are on this commission. So thank you. With that, do the trustees have any comments?
Mayor Pico,
Trustee Dodge?
just make sure, so there's a motion in front of us, recommend to the board. That vote, which I have no problem with because it'll kick off the process you just articulated, correct, George? So we're still going to have time for comment and input?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, there's so I guess I'm not quite sure if this is a question for the commission or for Trustee Healy. There's a couple things in here that I'll follow up on, but we had originally talked, I think, about having tightening up or improving or clarifying whistleblower protections for staff. Where is that accounted for?
Whistleblower protections, I believe you want to address that.
Whistleblower protection is part of state law. It is a matter of law, they have that protection.
Okay, and that's clearly called out here, or that's in our employee manuals, so it's clear to employees?
This ordinance adopts the relevant state laws. It's in section.
I saw the State Gift Ban Act, which is good, but I just want to, my point is simply to make sure that it's clear to all the employees that there are protections for whistleblower types of activities under state law existing. We don't have to do anything separate. That's what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Walsh?
That's correct.
Yep. And then I'll take this up with Trustee Healy and the others offline and submit some written comments that I had submitted some time back that don't appear to have been reflected in here, but I'll take that offline to make sure they are.
Any other comments?
Mayor.
Trustee Calandrello?
Just a couple comments. First of all, I do want to thank you guys for doing this work. A couple of things. Do we have any standards for what the ethical officer, who he or she can be? Is there at least a template of they should be, had this experience, what their qualifications for? I don't know who wants to field the question.
I'm going to jump in because I've read the thing. I think that it's up to the village president to appoint and the board of trustees to advise and consent. I don't think there's any written standard in there. It's up for this body to approve.
Okay. And then are we going to require a notary or them swear under oath for all the complaints? Might be a good way to make sure the complaints are valid, I guess, is this comment. And then what are we imagining for the hearing process? Something like our judicial administrative process? Who's going to be the determinator of those complaints? I guess it gets all the way towards the hearing process.
I think you guys can answer that, but I think I've read it, so I think the ethics officer refers things to the ethics commission, and the ethics commission adjudicates it.
Yeah, there'll be a procedure that's put together for the ethics commission and how they operate and how complaints will be taken.
So I know it's. I want to know vocally how there's going to be more procedures into that. Okay. And then at least my personal opinion is the procedural freeze for right before the election. While I understand the intent of it, you might have someone file a complaint and then the complaint will be open until after the election. So me personally, I understand the intent is so no one can play political games with it, but actually you're creating a political game with it because we won't determine the validity or if it's appropriate or not until after the election. So I would actually just add a speedier process if it's 45 days or more before the election, because someone can file it on the 45th day and then they can use it as fodder. So that would just be maybe something the committee looks into. Instead of freezing it for 45 days, have a extra speedy process or something to that effect. And then one more, I guess, we really haven't dealt with who've dealt with us and are conflicts, but do we look at disclosures from people coming in? So like the bidding process, a bidder can disclose, do you have a business relationship with a trustee or a board member? Is it over $500? More of the bidder making disclosures. I know other cities, I know for a fact the city of Chicago does that. Do we look into that where the bidder or whoever's looking for our business discloses that? Do we look into that process?
It's not currently, sorry.
The way the ordinance is drafted, the village official has to disclose, not the bidder, whether it's a trustee or a appointed member of a board. So there isn't any, this ordinance doesn't address anything about bidding.
Thank you.
Mayor Pico?
Thank you.
Trustee Dodge?
Just, as we think about a suggestion for you, you should consider this. I've long been a proponent that if we have an ethics officer position and it's separate from the ethics advisor, that we try and find a retired judge, for example, especially if there's compensation. I think that'd be a great place to go, because who could decide go, no go if it requires other prosecution? So you could find a retired judge or two.
Already been doing research on this once I saw the ordinance, so I have a pretty good handle on who I would like to appoint, and I'll talk to all of you about it once we approve it, so that it can be done, so that we can get it in place pretty quickly. Any other comments? Call the roll. Oh, Trustee Milani?
Oh, I always have to have something to say, right?
Yeah, we'll comment a little quicker next time.
Okay. Just thank you for all the hard work that you guys have all put in. Really appreciate it. And, you guys have developed a great product here, and looking forward to seeing it in action. Thank you.
Call the roll.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye.
Trustee Initiative, Andrew Corporation Site Environmental Status?
So Trustee Milani, you put this on.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, staff. I asked to have this initiative brought to the committee of the whole to, get some clarification around the former Andrew Corporation property that's currently owned by CommScope. Recently there was a chain of events, and there must have been a press release sent out by Mr. O'Grady proposing to use this property for a multi-use sports complex, which he seemed to have a designer pay to do this work and to produce this plan, and to think about using this to host the Pioneers in future seasons. It's to my understanding that this property is currently zoned commercial, not residential. It's had previous contamination located on the property, which was remediated to commercial standards. And I also recall that CommScope was not interested in remediating further. And when I was on the Economic Development Advisory Board, I think we discussed this area as a possible solution for a multi-use complex, and we had decided against it for some of these very reasons. So I noticed conveniently right after this article was published, in light of us all knowing at least a brief history of the property, Trustee Calandrello asked staff to provide detailed information about the site. And, this information really helped me confirm my thoughts about using the site for anything other than commercial standards. But that being said, I bring this forward just as a way to get an overview of the history of this property, the risks that could be associated with developing the land further, and to hear all the options that we'd have as a village as far as development, rezoning, or to possibly persuade CommScope to move forward with possible further remediation. Or maybe we could just cover all of that now and go from there.
So maybe I can jump in here, Trustee Milani. I can understand why you might want to put this on as an initiative. 3 of the trustees have been here during my entire term because we were all elected at the same time, and they've been fully briefed on this issue in the past and know the status, but the 3 of you who are new since last May haven't necessarily been. Here's the status as we know it today. The property is owned by CommScope, not Andrew Corporation. CommScope purchased Andrew Corporation. The property was rezoned commercial as part of a potential residential use, rezoned residential as part of a potential residential use back in around 2005, 2006 timeframe, maybe a little after that. That project fell through largely because of the environmental issues and the costs associated with remediating that. CommScope worked with the Illinois EPA, and according to the Illinois EPA, they have cleaned the property to a commercial industrial standard, which is what they're required to do because that's what they were when they were on the site. So it could be used today for commercial and industrial. And it can be built there, but a residential use would require, or a park, which would fall under that, would require further remediation. I met with CommScope personally. They actually flew in from North Carolina to meet with me. During our discussion, CommScope made it abundantly clear that they will never do anything with the property that involves residential parks, et cetera. They pretty much made it clear we'd rather let it sit in perpetuity than to even give it away. That's their words. The three previous trustees are all aware of this discussion, and because we talked about it, so that's where it stood. We also talked about that we would consider commercial industrial projects, but we would not we made it very clear to CommScope that we would not rezone it ahead of time to give them the right to do that. So because it's residential, if they come back with commercial and industrial, they have to meet, it gives us the ability to make them meet everything that we want, including additional landscape buffers and things like that. It wouldn't give them a right to do that. So leaving it residential is in our interest until they come with a plan. They did call me this week, or last week, as they thought it was one of our board members that made this suggestion, and they were a little bit concerned. And they said absolutely would not ever allow this to be a park. I confirmed with them that, in fact, it was not anyone on our board that did this. It was somebody else from somewhere else. They did ask if we would entertain the award-winning idea of the St. Michael's class that they came up with, which was to put solar panels and poplars that would clean the site over decades. Interestingly, St. Michael's kids actually worked with their staff to come up with some of that. And I said, it's something that the board would certainly entertain, listen to, and consider. The poplars, they said, over 25 to 30 years would actually take those chemicals out of the site. So it was something that they mentioned. And I said we would obviously entertain that. We would also entertain anything that was commercial or industrial. But that given the surrounding areas, we would require a very, very heavy landscape buffer. So, when I meant industrial, I didn't mean heavy manufacturing, I meant light industrial. The new head, they have a new head of their department. They just made another $8 billion acquisition, which is why they haven't really had this on their agenda. He said he is going to be out here within the next couple of months because of a project they have that's going on in Lyle. We'll meet again at that point, see where he's at. So now the three new trustees know the history. I know that George has sent you all of the background as well that Trustee Calandrello asked for. Personally, any other research or work on staff's part would be a waste of time, energy, and taxpayer dollars at this time. It's private property. We need to see what they come up with, and when they put it on the market, we will certainly work with them like we do anybody as far as trying to steer people to them if it's on the market. It's not currently. And I don't think we've had anything that really fits that 70-acre site come across anyways at this juncture. So, and then obviously I won't support the very dangerous idea of putting kids on a former manufacturing site so they can, potentially get sick. That's just an uninformed statement by someone who didn't even bother to pick up the phone or walk across the street to my office, because I could have given him this whole background in the same time I gave it to you and would have been happy to do so. So if anybody else would like to comment, feel free, but my position is there's no sense in wasting any more staff time or time on this.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calandrello.
I just have a quick question. I mean, you were in the meetings too. Did we ever talk about you paying for borings to see how bad it was? I thought that's why I asked for the update. First of all, because when something becomes a public interest, I want to know the facts behind it before I speak. But I thought, and that's why I was surprised that I thought we agreed to at least look into boring it for a little bit.
We talked about it, as I recall, and I think it was Attorney Fricker, not Walsh, that was here, but it's private property, so they would have to allow us on there. They're not showing any indication of being willing to let us on there in any way.
I know
So
we had
to let us bore, they would have to allow us on there, and they have no interest right now. They're saying that they want to do commercial or industrial.
I know we had that conversation, but I don't think we ever got the back, no, don't come on our property.
Yeah, when I think when I followed up and met with them, I think I passed that on, that right now they have no interest, but they do want to market it, and in truth, they haven't marketed it yet. And he said he said the reason was they're in an $8 billion acquisition, or $7.8 billion acquisition they just made, and they're wrapping that up first before they go down to this, for this particular project. And I think Ed would tell you that we haven't had anything that really fits that area. If we did, we'd reach out and call them, trust me. But we really haven't had anything come across where they're looking for something like that.
I remember we had a conversation about boring and whatnot. That's why I asked for an update, because I didn't know where that conversation ended. So, and like I said, when this topic in the community, I want to get the facts so I can talk intelligibly. So that's why. Also, I know that when I ask for information, everyone gets it, and we have 3 new board members. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Peacock?
Trustee Dodge.
Just a couple things. So thank you for the update, thank you for the briefing, and just broadly, to the extent that a private corporation ever changes their mind and is willing to work with the village in some way, shape, or form to make the site safe for another use, I'd certainly be open to that. That's long been an objective. It is what it is, right? No further remediation means leave it alone for a very long time. So if, to the extent that we could find a good use, I'd be all in trying to find what that might be. Without fixing the problem, we really can't put residences or parks there. That's pretty clear, right? So nobody wants to go there. But if there's an option to remediate, transfer land, fix it, or find a use that's compatible with current levels of contamination, I guess would be the word, then it is what it is. And just again, wanted to reiterate broad support for the idea of us as a board finding a place and a way to do a multi-use sports facility. We've talked about it a number of different ways. When Mayor Peacock, when you first came on, there was something that we were looking at. The deal didn't pencil out as we had hoped. This may or may not. I don't think this is a good option because of the contamination, but certainly ready to support the idea of a multi-use facility. It'd be great to get something at that Andrew site that's not what we're currently looking at, which is asphalt with a couple of weeds.
And what we do have is we do have 3 members of the Rec Advisory Board and 2 members of the Economic Development Advisory Board that are going to work together to try and come to look into the potential for a multi-use sports facility. We know that the presentation that was given to us in the past recommended in the meantime that we use John Humphrey Complex for that potential, not for multi-use, but that the best potential right now was baseball, softball, and they recommended that use for that was the best site. We also know that we have the master planning coming up for Schuessler Park and for Centennial Park this year, and we do have that extra 20 to 30 acres that we have that's not built out yet, that is not does not have the issues that we have across the street. So we have a pretty significant amount of land we already have right there that we could potentially do that with. There's a few changes we have to make to those boards because of majorities of quorums and stuff like that, but that's the plan, is to have those 5 people work together on that, and they're going to develop a plan from, how do we get the private interests as well as, does it make sense? Are there places where it's been successful, and can we model after that? So those are things that we've already discussed, but haven't gotten that far down the path because of other things we've been working on. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Malani?
Yes. Just a quick question for staff. I know there was a mention of like a $40,000 cost. Like if that would be if we decided to go and just look at this further to see what the options are for remediation, and then that would help us figure out what the actual costs would be.
Right. The $40,000 cost represented the review of their existing paper records, of which there's a multitude of documents available through the EPA, as well as it's reliant upon getting access to the site, which Mayor Peacock has already discussed is problematic, to do some borings and get that preliminary information.
Okay, so it would cost us $40,000 just to get an idea.
$40,000 just to find out what we've got and what it would cost to clean up.
And what it would, yeah.
And which could be hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever it ends up being.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one more, Mayor Peacock. So, clearly, it would be great if we could just get the answer. And I guess all we can do is wait for your office to be contacted, which is a good thing, by the corporate owner to see if there's an other creative use we could put that use to. So wait and see. But if and when they come to town and they're looking for a public-private partnership, I'd be interested.
I call them every few months, and like I said, last week I was on the phone with them and was introduced to their new real estate guy, and he said he's going to be out here in the next couple months, and we're going to go out and walk the site and the surrounding community. So, I think where their head's at right now is for however many years they were told anytime they called, and this is prior to, this is prior to me being here and prior to, the last election, as they were told it's residential or nothing, and they just basically said, okay, then it's nothing. That was basically their response. The good news is the last board, we all agreed, let's open it up and see what other options are out there, and they did say that they're interested in that, so I think we have to give them some time and see what they come up with, because I think turning that site into something of use would be beneficial for everybody. So with that, I would say to not spend, is there anybody that disagrees with my statement to not spend any more staff time on this? Okay, anybody? All right, so let's just go ahead and not pursue this initiative for now. And we do have a non-scheduled visitor to speak. Michael Gentile, and the microphone's over there.
I live in Old Orland, and I was not here last week in regards to 143rd Street. I just have a couple questions. When this was brought up previous, the Cook County Forest Reserve was not going to give any land up. Is that still?
To my knowledge, the Cook County Forest Reserve has already given all the easements necessary for all the phases of the project.
So they are going to give land so that a lane or two can be built.
They're going to give us the required easements. Yes. So they've already given us actually the right of way, I believe, is what they've given us to go ahead and do that.
But what does that mean that you're going to be able to build?
That means they've given us the right of way to.
But that's not an answer. I mean, that's.
It is an answer. They've given us the right of way so that we can build the.
Okay. And then my other question is how far towards the homes is the street going to be?
I don't have the engineering plans. The engineering drawings, we have them, but I don't have them with me because it's not on the agenda, and our engineer.
Well, I'm just you and I had emailed back and forth, so you told me that these questions have been raised to you monthly with your coffee. With
right,
all those
and
meetings.
as I pointed out, that so we've had concerns about cut-through traffic, we've had concerns about lights and traffic at Crystal Tree, we've had concerns about lights and traffic at the Creek Crossing, we've had concerns about flooding on 143rd Street, we've had concerns about safety at Southwest Highway and Union, and all of those issues. This project is engineered to handle all of those issues. It actually solves every single complaint.
But I'm more concerned about the residents who actually live there. And I'm not concerned about Wolf Road to Will Cook Road, because I do understand it floods. As soon as we get more than an inch of rain, it's the road shut down. It's shut down for a very long time. Same thing with Southwest Highway. I mean, we couldn't use Southwest. I have a storage unit in Orland Industrial, and I mean, I can't get there for almost a month, as soon as we get, a little bit of rain. So I'm not, and I understand at that point over there, there's plenty of land. But when you start coming towards, Highland Avenue, West Avenue, I personally, I don't see where you could put 5 lanes in there. And just 1 second, and now, in 2008, when this was brought up originally, we had a meeting with the mayor, I think a couple board members also. So, I mean, there was like 50 of us. We were actually notified ahead of time, that this was going to occur.
This project was engineered over a decade ago.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's why I'm asking the question is because prior, they were talking about taking the sidewalks out and actually building the street almost up to the houses. So, are all those houses going to be demolished? Are those, I understand that you don't have the engineering in front of you.
We do have the engineering, we just do not have it here with us. So,
right.
If you submit a FOIA request, I believe all that stuff is, Phase 1 engineering is nearly complete on the one phase. It's 100% complete on the other phase.
Right, and
so-
I remember
I'm asking
back-
our staff, so you
Yeah,
have all of that, correct?
That's correct, and as you've properly identified, there are varying sections throughout that widening project, so
Right.
if you wanted to reach out to me directly with a specific location or address that you're looking for, we can
Sure.
get you that data for that specific location, because it does vary throughout the project.
Oh, okay. And then is this still going to be paid for by the state, the county, the community, or, you know, who is going to
That's
fund
what
this
we
project?
discussed last week. It's a state project, and we're trying to obtain funds.
Okay, so
to get this-
at this point, there is no funding for it?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we were discussing last week, where how
Well,
do we get funding
like I said,
options?
I was only made aware of this actually through, Orland Park website, you know. That's where it came up to me. And then as soon as I was aware of it, I had sent you an email, as soon as I had heard from it. So like I said, nobody in my neighborhood it was actually aware at this point of this whole thing was moving forward.
Well, as I emailed to you, this has been discussed.
Well, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying as a resident, I work a full-time job. I have 3 kids, I'm trying to make time going forward to actually attend every single one of these meetings so that I'm not left in the blind.
Well, as I said in the email, this was engineered, Jim, Kathy, maybe you can, over 10 years ago, this was engineered.
Right, and
We got
I said I understand.
If you'd allow me to finish.
Go ahead.
If you'd allow me to finish. Additionally, every State of the Village address that I've had, every mayor's coffee, because it gets asked what our priorities were, our capital priorities have been outlined repeatedly. I think I've put it in every letter, every end-of-the-year letter at the Prairie for the last 3 years. I mean, it's something that has been discussed on a regular basis. Every capital meeting, we've talked about 143rd and what we're doing going forward as far as our capital plan. So this is something that we've discussed pretty much all the time. And unfortunately, we don't know where people get their news. We don't know where people get their information. All we can do is put it out on all the sources
but
that we
I'm just, when this was
available.
brought up initially, people from this staff, from this committee actually reached out to us.
Right,
So-
and
so
they
I'm
reached
just
out,
saying from-
and as far as the village is concerned, we reached out to you, and all that engineering was done. So that, I mean, that was the notification of
And
this project.
I understand,
because it
you're
hasn't
talking about a
changed.
notification that happened 12 years ago. I'm just talking about a notification as far as going forward at this point.
And the project that was notified 12 years ago, that's the same project that we're still talking
Right.
about today.
No, I understand it, and that's why I said the project before, like I said, you're just telling us, Forest Preserve is giving this right away, but you're not specifying if they're giving us 15 feet, they're giving you 5 feet.
It's in the plans.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else here to speak? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Adjourned.